A buzz of activity in Tianjin, China, around the 14th annual meeting of the new champions, also known as the Summer DAVOS. Representatives from more than 90 countries are taking part, and Chinese Premier Li Qiang was the keynote speaker during the opening ceremony. CGTN's Gao Wang reports.
Calling for better communication and exchanges among international community, enhancing dialogue, bridging differences, and building consensus. This is one of the key messages from Chinese Premier Li Qiang's keynote speech at the Summer Davos Forum.
There are still many global challenges and difficulties before us, such as climate change, slow growth, and the gap between rich and poor. We should cherish the existing cooperation achievements, further establish the concept of win-win cooperation, and join hands to meet global challenges.
Li also said that despite headwinds, the trend of economic globalization has never changed. This year, over 1,500 global leaders from business, government, civil society, and international organizations will be discussing some of the most pressing issues on the global agenda, such as energy transition, financial stability, economic growth, and generative AI.
We firmly oppose the politicization of economic and trade issues, and we must jointly maintain the safety, stability, and smoothness of global industrial and supply chain, so that the fruits of economic globalization can benefit different countries and people in a more equitable manner.
The forum will also discuss key economic indicators and momentum for global growth, prospects of China's economy, the climate crisis, and innovation. This is a critical time for global economic recovery in the post-pandemic era. The Summer Davos Forum says it aims to provide opportunities for in-person dialogue and focus on climate, energy, and technology for China, Asia, and the world. Gao Wang, CGTN, Tianjin.
Well, for some analysis, let's turn to William Li, rather. He's a chief economist at the Milken Institute. Bill, your takeaway from what Premier Li had to say in his remarks?
I think this was a very important speech that the Premier, Vice Premier made, because he was assuring the world that China is open to foreign capital, that China is not going to be closing itself off, because a lot of the impression you got from many of the party's speeches was that China really wanted to be independent and go develop its own market, develop its own national champions. I think this speech has made it very clear they're welcoming foreign capital if they come in to help develop the Chinese economy, which I think the message has been very clear. And many companies have actually responded to that message. Volkswagen, for example, promises whatever developments it makes in China will stay in China. So I think that's a very good start.
If you're an international investor or a major conglomerate, what specifically do you need to hear from China to make you feel at ease about investing there?
That's a great question. In fact, the main question that's asked at the Milken Global Conference was, is China still investable? And everyone is asking, in order for China to be investable, for us to really put money into China, we have to get the right information for us to do due diligence. And I need to hear much more from the officials that private sector information that people need to do due diligence, to get the information they need about the nature of the investments that are needed in China are readily available. And the latest sets of moves by the official parties have been one of a little dismaying, because they shut down a lot of private sector sources of information about the economy, and that's not a good sign, and that's something that should reverse very quickly.
Bill, as you know, we've heard a lot of phrases like decoupling, now de-risking. Premier Li called this a false proposition. Not all of us are economists like yourself, so perhaps you can explain to us what all these jargons mean and why it matters.
We all need one another because people have different sets of skills. And I think every economist will tell you we are an integrated global economy, and there's no such thing as decoupling or de anything. But now the question is, how do we make best use of our individual skills? What is it that China can provide the rest of the world? For example, right now, it's a leader in the development of electric vehicles. Only one company in the world, Tesla, is in the running to be a competitor to the Chinese companies. And that means that China is setting the standard for the world. And those are the kind of lessons I think that China has got to learn, to how to set the lessons, the standards for an industry like electric vehicles, not only for China, but for the rest of the world. And so decoupling is a myth. China is going to be part of the global economy, and now the question is, what are the rules of the road?
And what is your personal outlook for China's economic growth? Will they reach their target?
That's a stretch right now because it looks like there are some bumps in the recovery. The high youth unemployment is still an obstacle to people really spending freely. The real estate market has to be settled. So these, I think, are solvable problems for the policymakers. What I look ahead, the opportunities in China to be a high value added place of production, like it is in the United States, is very, very bright.
And finally, Bill, I just got to ask you, you've got a major conference going on. We've got leaders from New Zealand, Vietnam, Barbados, just to name a few. And should the United States have sent perhaps a high-profile delegation to this economic gathering? Why isn't there one there? And does it have anything to do with the fact that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was recently in China?
I think the way the politics are going, and I'm not an expert there, but I think one of the clear economic trends that I see is that we first have to get the politics settled before the economic delegations can appear and make the private sector deals. Right now, you've had a parade of CEOs from the United States come to China, and each one of them has said, we need to be in China and we're going to be staying in China. And I think that's a very good sign. But now the question is, what are the rules of the road that these Chinese and American companies will be dealing with? And that has to be settled with the top level policymakers like Janet Yellen, for example, who will be coming in the summer.
All right, we'll leave it there. William Li, thank you very much.